I'm Bill DeFoi. Welcome back in here to News Junkies. And visiting with me right now is our good friend, Michele Wilson, and she is here to talk about identity theft in the healthcare industry. Welcome back in here, Michele.
Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure being here with you, Bill.
I tell you what, we have experienced, or at least it was unearthed very recently, that there was a major breach in data at one of the healthcare providers. What's going on?
You know, last week there was a huge breach, and it was with Exelis, Blue Cross Blue Shield in New York, and they lost over 10 million members and the affiliates' information. And it was a cyber attack, actually. And the cyber attack actually occurred in December 2013, but they didn't actually knew that it happened until around August 5th.
Do you have any idea as to how they clued in that this particular breach took place?
You know, probably doing a check with their system and so forth that I think even earlier they kind of suspected, but then they really had to, basically leak it out that said, hey, it did happen. So it was probably through one of their maintenance check. It just took them a long time, unfortunately, with their systems just to really detect that that's how many members that they had lost the information.
We're hearing more and more about breaches in big companies. Target was one. But even more so now, it seems like I'm hearing more and more about data breaches in the healthcare industry. What's going on?
Well, with the healthcare industry, the reason why criminals, or I would say hackers, love hacking into healthcare professionals is because it has all your information. It has your date of birth, your social security, your address, email, even your financial information. And it also has description of your issues and problems and claims. So, it's just that information is so much more valuable than just a credit card.
Well, it seems to me a lot of healthcare providers, different doctors, hospitals, that kind of thing, are going more and more to electronic data keeping records rather than the old-fashioned chart. I'm going to write things down and compile the information that way to track a person's health history.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate. We're going towards it, easier to keep your information, and I can kind of think it's false that we think everything's secured. However, as you can see, cyber attackers are always one step ahead of us, and so your information is not as secured as we want to believe that it is, and just being that convenience, we've kind of lost that privacy. You're signing every time you go into the doctor's office this Privacy Act, but unfortunately we're in what we call the dark web, and our information is out there. Well,
that's called HIPAA, which is the healthcare provider disclaimer that we're not going to disclose this information to anybody that calls up and says, hey, would you tell me about Bill's health issues or Michelle's health issues. They'll say, we can give maybe a little bit of general information, but beyond that, we can't talk about the specifics.
Right, but as you know, they don't have control over people who are coming into their system and hacking it. And there's also another issue. There are health professionals, as you know, that I have a son who's ill, and the doctors and the nurses come to our house, so not doctors, really the nurses, and they have their laptops. They have their personal information on their laptop or in, drives that are not encrypted and so forth. So not only, hackers are coming in, but just the professionals handling our personal information that we really don't have control over. So that's another issue that we have.
And that's been an issue too, where the healthcare provider, in your case a nurse or some other healthcare provider coming out to your house, has the laptop and they're on a wireless network perhaps, or maybe even not, it depends on what they're doing, enters in that information. They set the laptop in the car and the car gets broken into, and guess what's on top there? The laptop. And so people can steal the laptop and bing, bang, and a boom, and there's the information.
Yeah, I've received a letter in the mail from my healthcare provider about my son's information. They found his information in someone's home. They don't give you the details, but probably someone had stole the computer and lo and behold, they found his information. And so it was interesting. They said they were giving us a identity theft protection monitoring service, but when you read the fine print, it didn't cover the minors. So, but thank God I have my own protection that does cover minors, and it covers more than just monitoring. It covers, anything that has to do with his information being stolen.
I'm going to get into the monitoring agencies that are out there. There are several of them. But let me ask you this in the interim. Are cyber attacks the only thing that we as a nation, perhaps as individuals, need to be really concerned about?
As I think we touched on it a few earlier, not only the cyber attacks, but we just have all our information in databases, but just really also the employees who are protecting who have access to our information that's not necessarily protecting it. I mean, they can even distill it out of a doctor's office, or a dentist's office. So even it's just the employees within that organization has access and have the ability of taking our information. So it's just not the cyber attacks or the criminals. It's just the everyday person who's working in a doctor's
within
office.
the office. I know that I've worked in environments. In another life, I worked in school financial aid offices, and because you have to require a student divulge his or her social security number, I can see that point, that employees can easily digest that information and sneak it out, not literally, but sneak it out the back door in a manner of speaking, and have access to that information on the outside, or sell it to somebody that will pay a pretty penny for it.
Yeah, I've heard that just the medical information is more valuable. I mean, they are sold between $3, up to, a few $100, $200, I think, just for the information. And if you have an employee that's, disgruntled or, about to leave, you just don't know. They'll download the information and just take it, or like you said, they could just sell that information too.
Now, we have agencies out there, I won't get into specific names, but and some are very well advertised, that say, well, we'll provide credit check monitoring or identity monitoring to make sure that your identity is protected at all times. And now they can't guarantee it, but are these services really worth the investment a person is required to pay them to monitor their credit?
Like you said, I don't think it can be prevented, but I believe if you have the right type of service, and you definitely want to make sure you have not just monitoring, because the credit card is, like I said, is just your financial information. You want to make sure that they're monitoring what matters, which is your personal. When they're on the dark web and they're trading your information, you want to make sure that they have those type of monitoring capabilities. But also, once your information has been, you've been a victim of identity theft, what are they going to do after that? And it's called full restoration. Are they going to do it for you, or are they going to, mail you a kit in the mail and tell you how to do it? So if you're going to do it yourself, then I don't think it's worth you having the service. But if you really have a full restoration service that actually is going to, you're going to give them a limited power of attorney and have them do the work for you, then yes, it's valuable, a valuable service.
Now, the other question that comes to mind, a lot of healthcare providers, insurance companies and the like, require that a patient should give out their social security number. Is that really required?
It's not really required as an identification purposes, and so you don't have to give it, but really it's not really just the social security number that's valuable, it's the information, just your hair color, what your ailments are and so forth like that. So that's also in your record. So even if you don't give them your social security number, they still have all that other information. So, I mean, it is a precaution that you don't have to give it, but just be, in mind that that's not the only thing that they need, to create another identity. All they need is your date of birth, your mailing address. I mean, just some type of information. We call it personal information to go out there and really create havoc on your life.
So they can tie little pieces of information together and knit a full picture of who Michele is, who Bill is, and others.
Yeah, they call it synthetic identity theft. So they could use your name, my social security number, someone else's address, and that's why it's not going to show up on a credit report necessarily, because they're using different bits of information. However, if you're driving down the street and you're pulled over and there's a warrant out for your arrest, who's going to jail? You are. And then, like I said, that's when you really want to have a service that not only covers, protects you on the side as far as not monitoring, but as far as just putting your life back together, but also it's a legal issue at that point in time. So you really want to make sure you have both the legal aspect and a company that's going to be able to help you restore your identity.
Well, I know back in the day when I got my Social Security number, I was probably 13, 14 years of age, going in to get a part-time job and wanting to earn a little money for the summer. And of course, I had to get the Social Security number. And nowadays, that's almost done at birth or shortly thereafter, which, gives even a higher probability. The longer the person has that number, the more likely they are, at least in my judgment, will be subject to identity theft.
Yeah, the minors are actually the fastest growing segment as far as identity theft, because who's going to think about checking their identity? And so, at 5 months of age, people are buying houses and cars and, committing crimes. And then when those children reach the age of 18 and they try to go to school, get a student loan, they're denied, or, trying to get a rental, home because they have this credit report or their credit is just totally destroyed. So, yes, I mean, the minors are just really, they're another segment that's really, it's just a sad situation.
Well, there's 2 points that come to mind. Number one, when I applied for the Social Security, on the card itself, the card said not to be used for identification purposes. And number two, that when you're issued that Social Security card, they advise you now not to carry that around with you, but keep that in a safe and secured place.
But is it really safe and secure? You keep it at home, but like you said, you went to school with it. You even now, I believe sometimes you go to DMV, you give that number. There's just different ways of giving that number, even though you're not giving it to them. Even when you went, like I said, went into school. I mean, we just don't have control over it like we used to.
Well, I deal with one telecommunications company, and I was having an issue with a bill. And they said, well, what is your Social Security number? And I said, I'm not really required to give that out, knowing that if that's who they said they were. I said, I'm not going to give out the full number. I'm happy to give out the last 4 digits, and you can compare that. And they said, okay, that'll be fine. And that's what I did. And we were able to get the issue resolved based on that, not giving out the full number. Is that a good practice?
That is definitely a good practice, especially if you're talking on the phone, because you don't know who you're speaking with over the phone. So, and if they accepted the last 4, I mean, that's, I would think it's okay. But when they're demanding that you give them the full identification number, your full Social Security number for ID, then I would be highly, cautious about that. So, yeah.
Yes, and people might, even in my case, somebody had called up and we want to verify your number, we want to verify your mom's maiden name, and I said I can't really confirm nor deny any of that, but they were still able to take that information and create the havoc that I went through, and I know you've been through it. So there's a lot of things that people can do to ensure that their identity is safe and protected.
Yes, we're on the internet all the time. Even in the social media, we have to be really careful. People are sharing so much information when they're creating an account. They're getting their information, and a lot of times you do have those privacies on them, and you can set those and so forth, but just be aware that everything we put out on the web, it's public policy, public domain basically.
Right.
People can get it. So our young children are on social media, even in our telephones. So just being more aware that anything you put out there, it's people are going to can use that information against you.
And social media is exploding. I mean, you have Facebook, you have Twitter, you have Pinterest, you have other things, Instagram, that all come to mind. And the more we participate in those, the more information is being disseminated out there.
Yeah, I really get leery when I'm opening up an account and it says, do you want to share your Facebook page? And then all of a sudden your information is just shared, and it really is a scary, leery feeling. That's why I said, you want to have some type of protection, because you just don't know. I just feel like I don't have, control over my information, especially when I'm opening up accounts and they're asking, can we share with Facebook and can we share with this one? And all of a sudden, all of my information is populated. So if that's the case, who else is populating that information? So it is a scary thing.
That's very true. Michele Wilson, from Premier Solutions. Please give out your name and web address, but not your social security number, and a telephone number where people can reach you if they want more information.
Well, my web address is Premier Solutions International, and my email is Michele, Michele, at PremierSolutionsIntl.com, and you can reach me at 805-304-5088.
Michele Wilson's been our guest, and we're going to have her back, and I hope that you will be back. I'm Bill DeFoi for News Junkies, a production of the Heritage Media Group.